And we're live on Unicorn Dispatch Live. Happy 2026, everybody out there. Apologies for starting a few minutes late, but you know what? You get what you pay for, so it's free, and this is what you get. I'm Bryson. I'm the CEO and founder of Scythe, and I am joined by a longtime friend of mine, Tanya Janca, aka She Hacks Purple.
So wonderful to see you, Bryson. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to be doing this. So, why don't we start off for the folks, which there may be like one or two people out there who don't know who you are. Who are you? What mistakes in life brought you to this webcast here today?
Um, so I'm a software developer turned application security expert. And I now give secure coding training and AppSec training full time at my little company called She Hacks Purple. And what landed me here? I met Bryson at many events and thought he was pretty great. And also, unicorns are awesome. So that is what I think landed me here today.
Okay. So what brought you to starting She Hacks Purple, and what do you do?
Yeah, so it's interesting, Bryson. So I was a software developer, and I met a hacker because we were both in bands. I played music professionally, and so he and I started hanging out. Or obviously, our bands had to play together. And then he's like, "You should become a hacker." And eventually, he became my professional mentor. And I discovered I was a terrible pen tester, but pretty darn good at AppSec. So I ended up there. But all this time, I wanted to take training, and training was really expensive, and the Canadian dollar is not super powerful. And so I figured out if you speak at a conference, you get in free. And so I was like, I'll do tons of work to create a talk good enough to get in free. And so then I started doing that. And because in my previous professional music experience, I did acting, I did comedy because I wanted to make less money than music. And so as a result, when I'm on stage, I literally jump up and down when I speak about DevOps. And so very literally the first time I spoke outside Canada, people just started mailing me plane tickets all over the world. It was quite wonderfully overwhelming. And so then I started giving workshops, and people were like, hey, like, can we pay you to give that workshop? And I was like, I like money. What? You'll pay me to do my favorite thing? Are you kidding? And so then it eventually turned into a full-time job. And in January, February, in March, I'm going to open up another online learning academy community called DevSec Station. And so then I'm going to have, instead of just corporate offerings, I'm going to have things where anyone can join, and I'm going to have like free events all the time, like I used to do with We Hack Purple, because I've really missed that. I really like being able to hang out with all the people and spend time with them. So I'm currently gearing up towards that.
Very cool. So is there like a time frame when that's going to be coming out exactly for people to, and where do folks go for that information?
So if you go to devsecstation.com, you can just sign up to be notified when we open. I'm hoping to open to the public in March. We're doing like a little trial run with my volunteer team late February. Yep, that's it. And basically, yeah, everyone is welcome and wanted. And it's going to be a nice place, so you can ask silly questions and people will not poop on you like they might do on some other forums. Nice people only.
That's good to hear. I think that building community is still a challenge. We have a lot of different personalities, folks with a lot of different perspectives, opinions, and I think there's still that, the old shadows of gatekeeping, where folks want to feel smarter or better by putting down others. And so that's really great that you're emphasizing the nice people and the helpful side of it.
Oh, yeah. At We Hack Purple, we had to give 2 warnings in 4 years, and we never had to kick someone out. And we had almost 14,000 members. So that's pretty good. And like the 2 warnings, they were like, I'm sorry. And I was like, that's cool. And then everything was fine. Right? Like sometimes it's just a misunderstanding, or someone's just extremely enthusiastic. And when you explain, it's like, oh, that hurt that person's feelings. They're like, oh, crap. I'll go apologize. Right?
That's an interesting point. Certainly there are personality characteristics, I'm going to phrase it that way,
Mhm.
that bring or align with certain kinds of folks in our industry. And so even though they don't mean it, they don't understand what they're doing, providing that kind of feedback, which also it helps to be positive and kind, and that kind of feedback can help bolster the community as well.
Yeah. Sometimes, so I don't know about you, Bryson, but I'm not great at answering all my social media in a timely manner. And there's no service level agreement when you DM Tanya. So you might wait like 6 weeks. And sometimes people will send me mean messages that they're quite upset with me. And so I write back something nice, right? Like I'm like, hey, I'm doing the best I can here. And like, there's no SLA. And, you know, when you send me a mean message that you're angry at me, it doesn't make me want to write back at all. Like I'm doing so much for free. I'm trying my best, I promise, but I don't actually owe you anything. And so I would like an apology, please. And 100% of them have said sorry. And then we have this great conversation after. And I feel like if you explain where you're coming from and you do it gently, you can something beautiful can come out of it a lot of the time. But if you come at it like, it almost always goes badly.
So that's why my joke at the beginning with us starting a few minutes late really resonated with you. I'm like, you get what you pay for. So us starting about 4 minutes late is not that much of a problem.
Yeah. And also we had a few technical difficulties, which happens on the internet.
Yeah, so I was going to type it, but Cloud Strife on your comment about StreamYard seems broken. Yes, Tanya and I both experienced that. So for all of you at home who really want to know what was going on in the backside of the studio, I tried a new format for 2026 where StreamYard claims, like many vendors do, claims, and we're going to get into that with application security. That's probably a good segue, that you can set up a recurring studio. And so you have the same studio link that all your guests can use. The problem being is that when we went into it, the link showed that the studio had already been spent effectively, and we couldn't start it. So there you go. That's what happened with StreamYard and why we had to migrate over on the fly. But like I said, that's a good segue into application security, because whether it's an open source or a paid tool or any of those different kinds of things, understanding exactly what you're getting from a vendor can be challenging, even through the best intentions. Certainly, there's also the long-running problem of nobody ever documents anything. So depending on developers to document, well, you know what, you get what you pay for there too. So Tanya, with that being started, why don't you start to talk a little bit more about how folks can approach application security and development?
Honestly, lately, Bryson, so in November, I did a talk at OWASP Global AppSec about the psychology of bad code. And, you know, I don't know about you, but like sometimes I'll write a paper or I'll make a submission for a talk and I'm kind of like, this is like the really weird part of Tanya's brain. I don't know if anyone's going to like it, but I've been reading a lot of psychology books and a lot of behavioral economic books, which is the science behind why humans make the decisions they do. Because I've always been very curious as to why people decide this or that. And then I looked at bad developer behaviors. So behaviors that we know end up with bad code. So for instance, never doing documentation, like you said, right? And then I figured out heuristics. So like biases that cause us to do those things. And then I looked up interventions that we can do that have studies behind them that can help. And then I was like, I'm going to submit a conference talk and we'll see. People really liked it. So then I've been doing deep dives and videos and blog posts into it. And it's stuff that I've been doing like in the training for a long time, because it's nice that you can tell a dev like, hey, you should double check the spelling on dependencies before you install it. But then we give them these really short deadlines. And then we install systems that automatically update things. And then we have like no friction or pause point. And then we do all these things to undermine them, having a moment's pause to look at it and actually do what we ask them to do, right? And so training's awesome. Just to be clear, everyone should hire me, but we also should support them with systems that cause, you know, friction at the point where we're going to make a decision, install secure defaults wherever we can. You know, I'm a big fan of like, because I'm just talking about dependencies right now, but like using a software composition analysis tool, tuning it in a certain way so that, for instance, it's only showing you things that are exploitable or reachable rather than every single thing ever. It's like, this is 5 steps down in your dependency graph, and like this code literally never gets called, but there's like this medium low risk thing that I don't need to know about that, thanks. So I feel like we're overwhelming developers a lot, and that is not getting us at all what we want. And we're giving them perverse incentives. Like, we pay them to create features, and then we don't reward them when they fix bugs or write documentation or do the things we say we want them to do. But just like how Enron had integrity on the wall as one of their values, it doesn't matter what we say, it matters what we do, right? It matters what we reward people for, what we fire them for, the reason we choose to hire someone over someone else, right? And like, that's the real thing that's going on. And so I've been just like writing and talking and making videos about just suggestion after suggestion after suggestion of specific things we can do one at a time.
So that's challenging, right? A business has to make money. And if you are a software vendor, you make money by selling your software. And the reality is, throughout the history of humankind, it is always going to be, is, and will be feature first, security second. Because without the feature, I have nothing to sell and I have nothing to secure. So the incentive, the business model is, of course, selling. Features are what sell. Customers have no ability to distinguish security anyway, right? If you're going to buy a car, how do you be like, well, I'm going to pick that one over that one if security is a primary focus? There's just no way to do that. So how do we adapt the psychology of where we want to incentivize secure coding against the fact that the basic ecosystem and model that they are functioning and incentivized in, their management drives, doesn't align?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I love it. So I was a dev longer than I've done security. Like, still, I have more software development experience than security, even though I'm at the, I think, 11-year mark for security, because I've been doing this my whole life. And so I feel like, instead of saying we have to do every single security thing that ever happens, so every single alert needs to get looked at, every single tool under the sun needs to happen, I feel like we need to be a lot more selective about what matters. So I'm going to give a talk this week at the Elephant and AppSec conference where we have hot takes. And the hot take is that DevSecOps just crushed us and ruined us. It was supposed to help. But what really happened is we all have backlogs of 500,000 critical vulnerabilities that no one's looking at because we're so completely overwhelmed. And when you actually start looking at it, you're like, garbage, 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 garbage. Here's one, you should do something about that. Garbage, garbage, garbage. I feel like it's okay to say we both work together at IANS, right? Yep. And so at IANS, a lot of consulting calls I would get, I'm just like, open your tool and I'm going to just throw stuff in the garbage. And I was like, you don't need to fix this, here's why, here's why, here's why. And like showing them how to, but why am I manually doing that? That's ridiculous. That's such a waste of money and time. We have these brilliant humans that could be doing something so much better. And so I feel like, rather than buying 6 more tools, we might need to look at what we have, throw half of them out and buy more modern ones. I think that we need to tune them so that they shut up a lot of the time and they're just saying something when we really need to hear it. So for instance, like the dependency thing, only if it's reachable, do I care, right? Only if it's like the first level of my dependency graph, maybe, because that's where I'm at, right? And that's what I realistically have time to look at. And, you know, going through and just removing every single dependency you're not using before you even check code in and making that a habit, or setting it to automatically do that, which you can do that with some of the dependency managers. Going and figuring out where the devs are getting their dependencies from, because it's not always a nice place. If we start finding things in nicer places that are trusted, we're going to do better, right? So I don't mean to just focus on supply chain. It's because I'm building a supply chain course now, so it's all fresh in my brain. But I feel like for each part of the secure system development lifecycle, there could be a lot of efficiencies. And sometimes our nose is so down on the, like just working, we forget the third way of DevOps. So the first way is, maximizing the efficiency of the entire system. The second way is getting really, really fast feedback. And the third way that people don't talk about a lot, that is the thing that makes DevOps magical, is taking time to improve your daily work regularly. And they say it's 1 day a month to add efficiencies. And if security folks did that and spent 1 day a month redoing all the notifications on the system so that the devs aren't drowning in alerts, right? Like, we can exponentially improve efficiencies because we are serving, 100, 200, 500, 1,000 devs for every AppSec nerd, right? And so if I can spend a day yanking out a system and another day putting in a much more efficient system, and then another day like changing all the alerts so it just screams at them when it's worth screaming, and then I save each dev like 2 hours a month, like I'm a superhero, right? And I feel like a lot of us aren't doing that third way of DevOps. That is the magic. That is, the things that make companies like Netflix something that you talk about, right? So I've been trying to publish a bunch of my ideas on those topics, but I mean, I've been doing that for years, but I'm shouting a bit more now, I guess, lately.
Sometimes into the void.
I don't know. I have some followers. Some of them listen.
So I think you brought up a good point there. We had this concept at Grim Cyber, my offensive consultancy. We called it dojo time, and there was a certain percentage of dev work that was allocated to essentially non-billable direct time, with the idea being is that you could focus on those sort of enablements, those kinds of things. And I think that's a good way to tackle it, because you talk about psychology, you talk about culture, you talk about system alignment, and having it be more unstructured, I think, is valuable, right? You need as much structure as we have to account for time. So I'm guaranteeing this much time, and then investing that time back in with that kind of perspective. Now, overall, you start to get there without it having to be a point and shoot, top down. You will do this kind of thing, which I think also, again, psychologically works more organically.
Yep, I agree. I totally agree.
And so another idea, and I'm trying not to pun it, but I don't know what else, you've been shouting. I don't want to pun it. I would just say you've been shouting it louder, and it's one that I really love, and I've adapted in different ways, which is the concept of security champions.
Yes. Do you want me to explain what they are?
Yes, please. Let's go into that.
So, because I've been championing the cause of security champions.
That was where I came up with another way. You gave me a shout out. I didn't say you were championing it.
So a security champion, the idea of this thing is that every single development team has one member that is the champion of the cause of security. And so you train them and teach them more than the rest of the developers. And then they show leadership by sharing that information within their team. They're the lead communicator on their team. They tell you what's going on, which projects are coming, if they need help, if something kind of scary is happening. And they will do things like make sure that the results of the pen test get actioned, or look through the scanner results, or tell you like, listen, like your team did this and we're kind of ticked and here's why, like this is some feedback for you so that we can do better. Because if no one's telling us, we don't know, right? And they'll just go behind our backs. I have this saying, developers are like water. They can just go around us. There's no technical control that can stop them, right? Like when we obey policies, it's because we're being polite, not because we need to. And so as a result, we need to show them that this is the way. And so usually security champions programs, like you meet once a month and you teach them something, you're there for them, you listen to them, you help them, you train them more than the rest of the team, but the rest of the team still needs to learn. So often when I come in for trainings, we'll do 2 days, and 1 day is with everyone. And then 1 day is like more advanced with the champions, or I'll come in the first month, just the champions, and then another thing with everyone. Like there's often like a separate, more intense thing with champions. And yeah, it's great because those people are usually the most curious, the most interested, the most passionate about security. And that's basically how I got into AppSec. Is I kept talking to the pen tester, I kept fixing all the results, I kept doing all the things. And one day the security team came over and they're like, oh my gosh, just come join our damn team. Um, and then the first thing I did was start a champions program because I had been a developer. So they all knew me there. And so I was like, hey, Stefan, can we do this? Can we do that? And before I knew it, there was one person on each team that I was always working with, that I was always training and always showing. And then it's like, well, we might as well all have a meeting and I'll buy pizza. And I didn't know until years later that there was a name for that thing I was doing. I thought it was a community of practice, which is a lot of what software developers do. And that's what DevSec Station will be. It's a community of practice. It's for all developers of all levels. But I was just like, oh, I'm just doing what I've always done, right? It's just like building a little community where I work of people that are interested in the thing I'm interested in. We get to know each other, we trust each other, we get stuff done. But it can be really powerful, assuming you execute well. I've seen a lot of poor executions, unfortunately.
It's like cryptography, right? It isn't the math behind it that's the hard part. It's the implementation that's the difficult part.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes people are like, well, I heard about security champions, so I'm just going to make a program, and they have really good intentions, but they don't tell the champions what they expect of them. And then they get super varied results. Bryson, of all the companies I've worked with, only 2, like I think I've worked with 54 companies or something, 2 had like in writing what was expected if you become a champion. And all the rest are like, they should know. I'm like, that doesn't work.
I'm going to give a shout out to the one company that of all the ones I've seen doing security champions looked like it was the best, and it was Taco Bell.
Oh, really?
Which seemed random. I remember meeting with them, and everything I talked about with them. I mean, you go earlier, we were talking about alignment and with management and ecosystem. The Security Champions program was something that was aligned into the HR performance management system. So you did get credit for it. It wasn't like hey, congrats, you've been punished with extra work. You got incentivized for that. The program had been running for a couple of years and had been pretty successful. They had the metrics to track that and to show that. So what are some good do's and don'ts for establishing your own security champion program at your workplace?
Okay, so I totally have a list.
You could also send me the link to the blog post, and I can post that too.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, we want to tell them exactly what we want from them, right? Because if we don't tell them what we want from them, we're not going to get clear things. So for instance, let's say I want all of you to use this sandbox and scan your app with Zap, and then I want you to fix anything that says hi on it before you send it to me, right? Like that's super clear. Or once a month, I want you to attend the learning thing, and like, please don't miss more than 1 per quarter, right? Another thing is, I opened the wrong list, but that's okay.
Hey, we started this whole episode on a technical glitch. You have carte blanche for the rest of it. As long as you stay there and still have sound, we're cool.
So another thing is like the security team. So I've seen this, and this is always like coming from the absolute best, most wonderful place. But the security team's like super excited, and they set this pace. They're like, we're going to do 1 week of intensive OSCP training with them full time. And then we're going to give them 3 weeks to pass that exam, which is like, you're not going to. They're like, and then we're going to meet with them like 3 times a week. And then we're going to do this and do that. And then after 3 months, the security team's like exhausted. The developers are exhausted. Then a security incident happens. Security team's distracted. 2 years later, they're like, so our security program's kind of dead. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But don't worry, we can breathe life back into it, right? Where they force people to become champions instead of trying to attract them. I don't know about you, but I don't like being told what to do usually. And being told, here's a bunch of extra work that you're not interested in. It's not we're going to have resentment. We're not going to have quality. And so while upper management, I believe it's mandatory that they participate, I think that the champions themselves should be voluntary. And so I do a lot of things to try to attract them, like telling them about security incidents we've had, letting them see all the cool new tools, letting them help me select which tools that I'm going to choose for them to use, right? Because it's their tool. Basically, I have like piles and piles and piles of recommendations on how to attract champions. A couple, like not many companies, but a couple companies, Bryson, I've seen where they tell me what they want the champions to do, and it's a full-time AppSec professional job. And it's like, they're like, I don't think 20 or 30 hours a week is unreasonable. I'm like, obviously that's unreasonable. Like, are they joining your team? Are you going to pay their salary? No manager is going to accept that. Like, you can have 1 hour a week, maybe 2 if you're super lucky. But I want to aside that with, how do I say this? So their team has security bugs. Some of those security bugs need to be actioned. That's that team's work already. That's not additional work. The additional work is having a meeting with me and telling me what's up so I can help them do their, make sure that they're on track, or if they need things, they need guidance, whatever, make sure I get it for them. If they're going to attend a training that I'm organizing or a workshop or something, that's extra work, right? So as long as you like clarify that, like any security work you do is not extra work. That was part of your job. Oh my gosh, I have so many, like I could go on and on.
I'll just jump in there on that one, because a security champions program, like a lot of things, there's maturity levels and there's different levels of expectation. To me, the minimum requirement for a security champion is a human sensor. You represent somebody who is just slightly more predisposed to security practices than the average employee in whatever your function is. Because, and I mentioned earlier how I have been taking the security champions idea broader than application development, right? There's no reason that you can't have a security champion in HR or in finance or in business operations and any of those things. And their job is to just say, we're talking about this. I feel like this is something that has a security impact. I'm going to go talk to security. And that's the minimum level, is the sensor, right? I just am a little more predisposed to this, and it solves the problem where we all over and over again, and in a number of the comments, shifting left. We complain in security because we're brought in at the end. Hey, we need to deploy this. That's your job. And we want it signed off by tomorrow. And we all go, well, if only we'd been told earlier. Well, a security champion with a sensor level approach solves that, because there's somebody who is representing you to some degree, and that's almost effectively free. Like, what does that cost? Well, some orientation, building a relationship, ongoing communications, and some level of training. That's the bottom level of a security champion sensor. Then you start to grow up from there, where of course a software developer should have more training and more awareness and be, the secure code warrior, not to call out the company, but that kind of perspective inside the development team, which I think leads to the next part of this. You talked about using SCA, but I think the broader idea there is threat modeling, right? We need to do threat modeling at an architectural level, at a user interface level, at a systems level. So how do you recommend on approaching threat modeling?
I love this topic. I just want to say one thing about the previous topic. I usually call them a security ambassador, if it's more than just developers, just to help me frame it with clients so I know which thing that they want help with, because I totally agree that we can have a representative from every single team. And like, I want to know what's up with marketing. I want to know what's up with, I want to know that we're safe. So that's really good. Okay, so very briefly, threat modeling is taking time, ideally a meeting with a couple of people, to talk about threats to a system, to have conversation and brainstorming session where you discover threats, you write them down, and then you talk about which ones you think are disconcerting, and then you fix them, or you adjust the system. Ideally, if you're designing a system, you do it during the design phase, because then guess what? You just erase the line on the whiteboard and draw the line somewhere else. And it's so cheap. Because like when you're doing it on a drawing board, it's free, but if you're doing it later, you have to get a jackhammer or you have to like redeploy code or rewrite things, and it's quite expensive, right? So the sooner that you can get a look at that and have a bunch of smart people looking at it with their evil hats on, the better ideas you can get and the better job you can do. And so threat modeling is something that is great with security champions, but any developer. I find the best way to introduce threat modeling is, and I do this a lot, so I get hired to talk to security champions programs like all the time. That's my bread and butter. And so I come in and I talk about like what is threat modeling and like various options, but we usually start with Adam Shostak's 4-question frame for threat modeling. So what are we doing? What could go wrong? What are we going to do about it? And then the last one, which is like my mom when I was a teenager in high school, did we do a good job? Because I've done threat modeling sessions, and Adam has told me this too, where you do the first 3 questions and they're like, I'm gonna manage that risk. I'm like, we both know that means nothing. We both know that means you're going to do nothing. And we now have like 25 risks and you're going to do nothing for all of them. Do you feel we did a good job here? And they're like, well, I'm like, let's take a look again. I find that the best way to introduce and like start teaching, quite frankly, is the way that I learned it the first time I was introduced to threat modeling, is the mission of the place that I worked. We threat modeled that. And I was working at Elections Canada. And I ended up leading the security across Canada later the next year, like as the CISO. And basically like we is fine because the public knows this is voter suppression. And that's where political groups use marketing and other tricks to try to get large groups of people not to vote that they know will vote for the other party. And they will lie, they will use fear, they will use threats. It's really awful. And it's something that Canada had not previously had a lot of experience with, because the people that do that professionally spend a lot of time, I'm sorry to say this, in the United States. And we could actually see their passports crossing the border. And that's terrifying because we know them. And then the other thing is that.
Well, it looks like we did lose her that time. So you are left with just me for the moment. What questions do you have for me? I'll answer them while we wait for Tanya to come back online. I'm going to text her too. I know, just Bryson. You're stuck with me. What do you want to know? You got me until we get Tanya back. Happy 2026, by the way, everybody. I know it's start of a new year, and probably a lot of questions and thoughts and concerns. Where do you see security champions fitting into overall security maturity for an organization? First, let's start with the fact. I'm going to quote a good friend of mine, Wolfgang Gerlich. We were doing some planning earlier about the third-party risk management class that we're going to be teaching this year, and he commented on the fact that we need to do T-shirt sizing, large, medium, and small. And the point of that is the fact that not all companies have the resources to do this stuff. One of the jokes that I make when I get asked all the time, like, well, what kind of customers does Scythe have? And I'm like, anybody with enough money. Because the reality is there's this budget line, and it starts with the amount of revenue that a company makes, turns into its operating expense, which turns how much they spend on IT, which turns into how much they spend security. And the slope of that line will shift a little bit based on the industry vertical. Like manufacturing is going to have a steeper line than, say, finance. But the point being is if a company doesn't have enough money, they're not going to invest in these things. So you kind of have to reach a point that you can afford to spend the extra time or in resources, or like I was talking about at Grimm with Dojo time, to have a security champions program. The second part is where do they fit into the overall maturity of an organization? I think it's the second that you cross that line and you have a mature development practice, is when you need to start investing. We have the ability to push features roughly on time, on budget. Now we need to look at how do we bolster our security more organically, because the traditional security paradigm is at best, as a part of the testing program, there might be establishing security use cases. Those might be tested, and or whatever passes for independent security testing, whether that's an outside pen test or inside application security and pen testing. Getting it to be more organic naturally as a part of the next step in the development program at that point is what I would suggest, is where you start bringing in security champions. And then also what I was saying earlier, security champions work broader than application security. There's no reason that we don't, again, I call them, more of a sensor mentality, because I think about the language that's used in phishing training, because I don't think phishing training does a whole lot, but getting certain kinds of employees to be able to act like sensors to phish and activity does help. And so the same kind of thing, using them as a tipping point to bring the security organization in when they think that there's a question or there needs to be something raised, just makes it easier across the board for any kind of security challenge. Let's see, going back through questions. I'm not familiar with security. Yeah, I'll just put the question up. That's probably easier. Okay. So Riku's question here, I'm not familiar with security champs. Do they have a certain seniority level that they, hold on. She is trying to get back in. So I'm sending this to Tanya right now, emailed. She's back.
Hi.
Tanya, I had to hold down the fort without you. So the question that we came into that I was answering was, I'm not familiar with security champions. Do they have a certain seniority level that they pull from, or is it performance-based?
I personally am willing to accept a security champion at pretty much any level, as long as they're enthusiastic and they show up regularly. I've worked with a lot of companies where they're like, we just want the super senior people. And don't get me wrong, super senior people are brilliant, and that's why they're senior and they know all the things, but they also have no time.
Yep.
Right? They're usually extremely busy because everyone wants to talk to that person. So if a senior person is interested, like, I'm down. But I find usually it's people kind of in the middle of their career and juniors, and they'll give me a lot more time if they're junior.
So following up on what Tanya said, because a lot of folks, when they look to start a security champions program, go, well, right, obvious question, where do we pull them from? And you can't mandate it. You can't dictate it. You can't volunteer somebody, you are going to be a security champion. It has to be a volunteer pull. And so you're going to start off with, you need enough of a program with already establishing what it is, going back to Tanya's comment earlier in the show with, well, what is the purpose of the program? And then where I was talking about alignment and incentive structure around that. And you have a few sessions basically with, the open pizza party of come, we're going to talk about this and who wants to sign up. And it is their enthusiasm and their diligence, because if you don't show up, you're not getting the things, you're useless, right? You're not actually doing the part. That to me, again, tie into what Tanya said, I agree. Those are the mandatory minimums to what gets started. And as she said, you're more likely to find that in a junior or mid-level career. Back to the HR incentive, it also will help them in their career inside of the company as well. So that's where the company incentivizes that kind of participation, but you can't mandate it. You have to recruit it.
It doesn't work well. I agree if you do that. Another thing I want to add is, so like, let's say you work somewhere and there's already a developer community of practice, become best friends forever with whoever is leading that and ask if you can guest lecture, right? And work with them, because then you can reach all the developers somewhat often. Because when I ran, so I ran a community of practice for 3 years in the federal public service in Canada. And at first it was just my department. But by the end, we were broadcasting it across the entire government for anyone to join in. And we started with, just development topics. And then I got interested in security and we had security topics. But I also would do things that are off topic. And once you have the foundation set, I want to encourage you to sometimes do things outside of like the main topics you were considering, assuming the developers have shown interest. So this might sound odd, Bryson, but like we had a session where I had the running room come, and it was all about fitness and being how to go on a run at lunch and not be the stinky person in the meeting later, and how to like build that into your week and not tick off your manager. We had a nutritionist come in. We had a person come in and show us like stretches you can do every day to undo some of the damage from sitting at a desk and using a computer all day. So we had all sorts of different sort of like kind of off topic things, like once in a blue moon. And then not only did we offer lunch, but I would bake cakes, cookies. That's how I would pay my speakers. I would bake them cake. And then they like eventually so a thing that you should measure is, and this surprised me. So basically the second year I got a call from HR and they're like, we just did the annual, performance reviews, and they do a survey of all employees for satisfaction. And she's like, and your group went from like 1s and 2s out of 5 for satisfaction to 5s. Like you're averaging like 4.6. She's like, what have you been doing? And so I'm like, oh, I've been doing these lunch and learns, and like, and we're spending time together, we're having all this fun and blah, blah. And she's like, do you realize no one's quit in a year? And your turnover used to be like 25%. And I'm like, wow. And she's like, do you realize no one's been absent? You've had like, they used to take all 3 weeks off, and now almost no one's absent at all. Do you know that? And I was like, no, I don't. Why would I know that? Right? Like, I'm just the nerd that gathers the other nerds to hang out. And she's like, well, whatever you're doing, you keep doing it. I'm calling your boss. And so then we made this incentive program. If you attended so many per quarter, there'd be an afternoon where all of us would all go out together and like play pool or do something together. And so then you would visually see all of us leaving together. And then we'd all talk about the next week, how much fun we had. And then everyone's like, well, I have to attend next quarter so I can go to the thing. And some of the managers were like, why are we giving them more time off for this stupid crap? But most of the managers are like, my team is so much happier. And like, it's hard to hire, and having people like not leave is awesome. Like keep doing. Most of the managers were really on board. Some of them were a little annoyed. They're like, why should they get rewards for doing their damn job? I'm like, well, I see why people don't want to work for you. But like, that's a thing that a lot of people don't see. So you might notice that like, they'll work for you longer, they'll be happier, they'll work more hours, they'll fix more bugs because you're treating them so well and you're supporting them, and you show that you care regularly, like with your actions, not just words.
Good culture building, very underappreciated in some places. And I would note that you were actually given the metrics back on the productivity increase on it, which again, that alignment back to core business is part of what makes this easier as a team leader, as a manager, as a champion trying to drive these kinds of programs.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of places don't measure things like that, though. It's same with training. Like I'll give training somewhere and people are like, do you have metrics on your training? I'm like, no one's going to share those with me. Like this many bugs were fixed. I'm like, but I can tell you the security team's like, wow, they email me and talk to me all the time now. They're asking me for threat models. They're like, hey, I want to get this tool. Can you check it out with me? Like they talk to me all the time now, where before they didn't know my name. And I'm like, yes, we are winning so much right now.
So something I wanted to go back to, so switching off of security champions back to a pure developer focus, we talked about threat modeling. We talked about using software composition analysis tools, and how do you handle the fact that a lot of developers don't think that the standards apply to them, right? And that can have security implications, right? You talked about limiting dependencies. Well, of course, I'm reducing surface area if something doesn't need to be called. I don't need that library. For those of you who work on the offensive side, you're well aware of why DLLs are the best way to start initial code execution on a computer, because it's a library. Right? And libraries are pretty much all good things. And there's no way to really tell what a library's purpose is. There's no malicious bit that goes on something. But bringing in those kind of independent dependencies, libraries, and I'm not trying to, I don't want to make it sound like open source is a particular challenge, but open source is a class of a challenge. All the way to things like bringing in your own VMs or AMIs, like stuff like that can contribute to all the hard work on the front end with doing proper development, but you introduced vulnerability behind you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm probably going to sound pretty biased here, because, you know, when you're like, you sell a product and they're like, you know, what would solve that as my product. So so take this with a grain of salt, but
Tanya,
I feel, no, but I feel education is the best way to fight things like that. So if people understand why the thing is a problem and they've seen it with their eyes that it's a problem, and then you're like, but we could do this instead, and then we'll have less problems. You're more likely to get the thing rather than just saying, don't do this because reasons. You know how kids are always like, why? Adults, we're thinking it too. We're just less vocal about it. We all want to know why. And I mean, that's part of why I see a lot of people showing exploits and vulnerabilities instead of secure coding and secure coding classes. I do think that like showing someone the problem helps. I do think we should focus more on how to be awesome at your job, because we're not trying to build pen testers in those classes. I mean, if it's a pen tester class, smash all the things. But I feel like if someone understands fully the risk and the problem, and then also we're incentivizing them to do the right thing, again, like if we're like, yeah, the 5 whys, exactly. If we're only, you know, giving kudos when they do a new feature. So a thing Bryson, I was consulting at this place and I walk in and I look, so there was a different security consultant before me. And I know like I'm the care bear of security. I'm all soft and cuddly and nice and whatever. And we don't all have to be like that. But I walk in and there was like a list of developers that were being shamed, printed and posted on the fridge in the kitchen for bad code and creating vulnerabilities and being bad at their job. And I was like, so I tore it down. I was like, no, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to celebrate teams that have done well and individuals that went above and beyond from now on. We will have no more shame. Criticism really doesn't work unless your goal is to get the person to never speak to you again. That works well. And if you want them to avoid you, criticism works well. But the rest of the time, it doesn't actually tend to curb behavior. It just makes people not like you. Positive reinforcement really, really works, not just on children, works on adults. I always tell my bosses, like, if you give me a pat on the head, I'll be like the happiest employee. And so we immediately changed it to like security superstars. And then I put positive things on the fridge. And some of the devs told me, they're like, I was too ashamed to bring my lunch to work because of that list. I would go down and buy something like at a restaurant instead every day because I felt too embarrassed. No one should ever freaking feel like that at work. That's ridiculous, right? And so I would say that training so they know why, positive reinforcement of when they're doing the right thing. And that can just be like you emailing them, you putting a thing in Slack, like the littlest tiny notices of things doing the right thing. All of that is good. Like, oh, last month we had like this much, this month we have that much. Oh, I heard these people talking about this. That's great. Every bit of positive reinforcement, every single guardrail that you can put in place. So when I say a guardrail, I mean setting the default to be the most secure way to do the thing, setting a scan to automatically run, blocking a check-in if it looks like there's a secret, having it when they go to add a dependency, having it then be forced to have the pull request is reviewed by a second person. And it adds a little note that's like, hey, there's like 3 new dependencies added. I need you to review those, right? So is that going to take a lot longer? It's going to take a little longer, right? But compared to, a security incident later, it is cheap in regard to time. So I feel like we need to show them the reason and then set them up for success to do the right thing. Hi, Chad. And hi, Chad.
the psychology of what you were talking about with the refrigerator incident is there's a ratio of positive to negative comments to balance. For every one negative comment in the workplace, you need 5 positive comments to balance it. So if you ever want to understand the management psychology theory of this, that's the ratio. And in personal lives, it's 10 to 1. So in your personal relationships, one negative comment needs to be outweighed by 10 positive comments. So just some of the math behind being a better person and a better person in the workplace.
Well, and I think it depends on the way that you communicate the negative things too. I'm sure we've all had people give constructive criticism in a way where it makes us better versus we feel bad about it for 3 weeks, right? And so if you can, like, I've had friends where they're like, I have to say this to my employee. So as an example, one of my friends, she has an employee where the employee just puts every single email and every single thing she writes into ChatGPT, M dashes and bolding and all, and just copies it into emails and sends it to their customers. And she doesn't read it, and she just sends it. And it's wrong a lot, and it's really obviously AI generated. And she's like, I have to explain, like, you look lazy and stupid when you do that. And I don't know how to say that in a nice way. So we like role played it like a bunch of times so she could say it like, because she's like, this is not acceptable. And I have to find a way how to say that that's not acceptable, and find a way to work with this employee so she is doing a good job. And it was complicated because the employee's like, well, I think it makes me sound smarter, so I'm just going to keep doing it, which is open insubordination. And so it was like a long time. And so if you're not sure, like, talk about it with a friend that's also a manager or a leader, right? And role play it back and forth, which might sound silly, but it's a lot better than having an employee like call HR or quit or whatever, or just avoid you from then on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yikes.
Yeah, they are still having discussions, but it has improved quite a bit. And that person's now taking writing classes so that she feels more confident with what she writes.
Interesting. So as we start to wind this down, Tanya, what are some last thoughts you would like to leave with what has now been grown to a substantial audience, courtesy of folks catching up from social media to the right location of this one? The next one, I'll have that straightened out. Maybe, fingers crossed. We'll see. I'm not promising anything.
If I could ask everyone to do a thing, it would be that if you are using the AI to generate any code, that you carefully review it and understand it before you commit it. And if you're not sure, if you have access to 2 AIs, I kid you not, just ask the other one to review it and fix those things before you commit it. And you will be committing much better code. I have 400 other thoughts, but let's leave it with that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would hope everyone at this point understands that, like anything, AI is just automation. Automation just gets you there quicker. Doesn't mean it gets you there better. It just gets you there quicker.
It gets you somewhere quicker.
Gets you somewhere quicker, right? But where, that's the question, and hence the need to review it. So I firmly agree with that one. So Tanya, really want to say thank you. It was great to catch up. You were the first guest of 2026. Which, of course, 2026 following 2025 meant we had to have some technical glitches to start it off. For those of you looking forward to the next one, I'll have Alex Sharp on January 26th at 4:30 Eastern time. And we're going to be talking about what drives the board at a company. So Alex has started 2 companies, one of which got listed on the NASDAQ. So he's been all the way up to that level. And yeah, has been and consults with companies at the policy level. So I always like to, like the talks I give on starting your own company, even if you're not going to start your own company, understanding this stuff, just like a lot of what we're talking about here today, is going to make you better at what you do. So Tanya, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks for the next Unicorn Dispatch Live.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.